Punchline's back room smelled of stale coffee, old cigarette smoke, and the faintest trace of spilled beer, comforting in its familiarity, unsettling in its evidence of late-night worries. Max Harper slumped onto the cracked leather couch, the one spot in the club that hadn't been replaced since the 90s, his battered notebook resting limply on his knee. The scribbled pages inside held more than jokes. They held the weight of his fears, his hopes, and the fragile thread that still connected him to this ragtag family. Jenna Lee perched on the edge of a folding chair, her colorful outfit a sharp contrast to the dim surroundings. Her eyes, usually bright and quick to laugh, were softer now, focused on Max in a way that suggested she saw more than the sardonic front he usually wore. Elliot Brooks leaned against the peeling wall, arms crossed, but visibly less guarded than in weeks past. The tense distance that had grown between them since their public confrontation had begun to thaw. "I don't know how to fix this," Max confessed, voice low but steady. "I've been running scared, trying to be the guy who keeps it all together, but maybe I'm just scared I'm gonna lose everything." Jenna's lips twitched into a sympathetic smile. "It's okay to be scared. Hell, it's brave to say it out loud." Elliot nodded, the smoke from his half-smoked cigarette curling in the stale air. "We've all been hiding behind jokes. Maybe it's time to be honest, even if it's messy." For the first time in months, the three of them sat, not as performers competing for laughs or status, but as friends bound by shared dreams and vulnerabilities. The tension that had fractured their group began to knit itself back together in the quiet of that cramped room. Meanwhile, Jenna wrestled with her own internal battle. In her cramped apartment a few blocks away, the glow of her phone illuminated swatches of fabric and scribbled notes. Invitations to gigs, calls from agents, texts from friends, each one a tempting promise and a potential trap. She had always been the energetic optimist, the one who could juggle a dozen things at once. But the recent breakup had left cracks in her armor. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Jenna took a deep breath, silencing the buzzing phone. "I can't do everything," she whispered to herself, a rare moment of self-care that felt both foreign and necessary. Her comedy was her lifeline, but she had to learn to protect it without losing herself in the process. Across town, Elliot found solace near the neon sign of the Punchline, its erratic flicker mirroring his own uncertain mood. The cold air nipped at his face as he pulled his simple tee tighter and let out a dry chuckle, a joke forming in his mind. It was small, but it was a starter, spark of joy he hadn't felt since the slump began. In that moment, surrounded by the city's restless hum, Elliot reconnected with the passion that had once fueled his rise. Back inside the club, Maya Sanchez sat at her cluttered desk, the weight of unpaid bills and looming deadlines pressing down on her. Her glasses caught the low light as she methodically flipped through the paperwork. Each figure a reminder of the personal sacrifices she was making. Formerly an actress, Maya's fierce protectiveness of the Punchline was born from love and necessity. Without her steady hand, the club would have crumbled long ago. Tony Russo's boisterous laughter echoed faintly from the bar area, a reminder that even amid struggle, moments of levity persisted. His attempts at physical comedy had faltered recently, but his loyalty never wavered. He was the heart and brawn of the troupe, grounding them when tempers flared and spirits flagged. Together, they formed a patchwork promise not of certainty, but of commitment. The fractured friendships and personal struggles that had threatened to unravel them were met with honesty and effort. Max's rare openness became the turning point, a beacon for the troupe to rebuild trust and find new strength. Yet the stakes were clear. The Punchline's survival was not guaranteed. Financial pressures loomed like a storm on the horizon, and the threat of eviction by Victor Crane's legal team was a constant shadow. Still, in that room filled with worn-out furniture and broken dreams, the comedians found a fragile hope. As Max closed his notebook for the night, a sardonic grin flickered across his face. "Maybe we're not done yet." Jenna smiled, the weight on her shoulders feeling a little lighter. "No, we're just getting started." And Elliot, inhaling deeply, flicked his cigarette ash into an empty jar, ready to find his voice once more. The Punchline wasn't just a club, it was their home. And tonight, amidst the patchwork promises and quiet resilience, it was alive again. But the question remained, could this fragile hope hold against the mounting pressures? Only time would tell, and the comedians were ready to fight for every laugh along the way. As the city lights shimmered beyond the cracked windows, the troupe prepared for the uncertain road ahead together. The Punchline buzzed with an energy that had been absent for months. The air was thick with sweat, anticipation, and the faint scent of stale beer mixed with the unmistakable aroma of old wood and fading paint. The flickering neon sign outside, usually a pale beacon struggling against the dark New York night, now seemed to glow with renewed life, as if the club itself was holding its breath. Backstage, the cramped space was a chaotic symphony of nervous pacing, last-minute joke revisions, and the clatter of props. Max Harper leaned against the peeling wall, fingers twitching as he flipped through his battered notebook. His dark hair was tousled, and the familiar worn leather jacket hung off his slender frame like a second skin. Around him, the troupe prepared for the night's performance with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Jenna Lee, brimming with her usual infectious energy, adjusted the hem of her vibrant blouse, her short curly hair bouncing as she laughed nervously at a joke Tony Russo had just cracked. "You sure the crowd's going to show up tonight?" Tony asked, his voice a low rumble, the backward baseball cap shading his earnest eyes. "They will," Maya Sanchez said firmly, standing nearby with her clipboard and glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. Her short bob framed a face set with determined pragmatism. "We've got a surprise guest," the words out. Max raised an eyebrow but didn't ask for details. He trusted Maya's instincts. She was the glue that held the Punchline together, the pragmatic heart behind the chaos. The door to the cramped green room creaked open, and a hush fell over the small circle. In stepped the celebrity comedian, a figure whose name alone had sent ripples through the New York comedy scene. Stylishly dressed, their confident smile was effortless, the kind that made people lean in and listen even before a word was spoken. "Everyone," Maya announced, her voice steady but excited, "please welcome our guest of honor." Jenna's eyes sparkled, and even Elliot Brooks, tall and lean as ever in his simple tee and jeans, allowed a small smirk to tug at his lips. The veteran comic, usually wrapped in layers of dry sarcasm and guarded detachment, seemed momentarily disarmed by the presence. The celebrity took the stage to a swell of applause that filled every crevice of the aging club. The crowd's energy shifted palpably, the usual mix of hopeful regulars and curious newcomers, now charged with an electric enthusiasm. The Punchline felt alive again. Max watched from the wings, feeling a rare flicker of hope. The celebrity's set was sharp, delivered with practiced ease, yet punctuated by moments of genuine warmth toward the local scene. They praised the Punchline's gritty charm and the resilience of its troupe, a nod that sent a wave of pride through the performers. When it was time for Max to take the stage, he felt the weight of the moment press on his shoulders. The applause was louder, the lights brighter, but beneath it all was a whisper of doubt that never quite left him. As he delivered his set, his usual sardonic humor sharpened by the crowd's energy, He caught Jenna's encouraging smile and Elliot's subtle nod. For once, the humor felt effortless. After the show, the club hummed with excitement. Media folks gathered outside, snapping photos and scribbling notes. Maya moved through the crowd, managing questions and smoothing over logistics with practiced ease. Tony was in his element, basking in the renewed attention, his boisterous laughter echoing down the hallway. But away from the noise and laughter, Max found a quiet corner outside the club. The cold New York night pressed in, breath visible in the air as he pulled a crisp envelope from his jacket pocket. The embossed letterhead bore the name of a prestigious venue, an invitation to perform on a much larger stage. His fingers trembled as he read the formal words, the promise of opportunity shimmering against the bittersweet backdrop of the punchline's uncertain future. Loyalty warred with ambition in his chest. Could he walk away from the place that had given him his start? Could he leave behind the friends who had become his family? Meanwhile, miles above the city streets, Victor Crane met with his legal team in a sleek office tower. The city lights sprawled beneath him like a glittering web of possibilities and profits. His cold eyes reflected the impersonal gleam of spreadsheets and blueprints, symbols of redevelopment that spelled doom for the punchline. "Time's running out," Crane said, voice smooth but edged with steel. "They don't know it yet, but the neighborhood is changing. The punchline is just a relic in the path of progress." His team nodded, ready to move forward with eviction notices and legal pressure, the machinery of gentrification grinding inexorably onward. Back at the club, the troupe gathered one last time before heading home, the night's glow still lingering in their eyes. Jenna's optimism flared brighter than ever, but even she couldn't mask the tension that tightened their smiles. Max folded the invitation letter carefully, slipping it back into his jacket. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the fight to save the punchline was far from over. As the neon sign flickered once more, casting a surreal glow on the cracked pavement below, the comedians stood together, a ragtag family bound by laughter, dreams, and the fragile hope that tomorrow might yet bring a new beginning. The back room of the punchline was a collage of chaos and faded dreams. Scattered across the battered wooden table were crumpled napkins, half-empty coffee cups, and Max Harper's ever-present battered notebook, its pages filled with sharp observations and jokes that sometimes felt like lifelines. Tonight, however, the usual scribbles were overshadowed by a crisp, cream-colored envelope, an invitation that could change everything. Max fingered the edges of the letter, the weight of its promise pressing down on him. A prestigious venue, an opportunity to perform on a stage that could launch his career beyond the dim lights of the punchline. Yet, as the neon sign outside flickered uncertainly, so did Max's resolve. The club was more than just a stage. It was a sanctuary for this ragtag group of comedians, a place where their fractured dreams found a semblance of unity. He heard footsteps approaching and looked up to see Jenna Lee's vibrant presence filling the doorway. Her short curly hair bounced with energy, and her colorful outfit stood out sharply against the club's gritty surroundings. Jenna's eyes locked on the envelope with a mixture of hope and concern. "Max," she began, voice steady but urgent, "we can't keep treading water here. That invitation, it's a sign. We need to push forward, take bigger steps. The punchline's future depends on it." Max sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, Jenna, but if I leave, what happens to the club?" "To us," Jenna stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "We're stronger than that, but we need to believe it, all of us. Especially Elliot." Before Max could respond, the sharp scrape of a cigarette dragging against the ashtray cut through the room. Elliot Brooks emerged from the shadows, tall and lean, his usual simple tee and jeans blending into the club's worn backdrop. The smoke curled around him like a shield as he took a slow drag. "So, the prodigal leader gets a shiny offer," Elliot said dryly, eyes narrowing. "Funny how the big leagues always want you after you're already drowning here." Jenna's eyes flashed with irritation. "It's not about leaving anyone behind, Elliot. It's about growing, about survival." Elliot flicked ash onto the floor, his voice low but cutting. "Survival's a joke when you're selling out the people who got you started." The tension thickened, the room seemingly shrinking as old wounds and new ambitions clashed. Max's hesitation, Jenna's determination, and Elliot's cynicism formed a volatile triangle that threatened to unravel the fragile bonds holding the troop together. Outside, the muffled sound of laughter and applause from the club's main room contrasted sharply with the storm brewing behind the door. Maya Sanchez, ever the pragmatic manager with her short bob and glasses, entered quietly, her presence immediately grounding. Tony Russo, stocky and boisterous in his trademark backward baseball cap, followed, sensing the rising heat. "Enough," Maya said firmly, stepping between the trio. "We're all fighting for the same thing. But this division, it's exactly what Victor Crane wants." Tony nodded, his usual loud energy tempered by seriousness. "Yeah, we're not just comics, we're a family. And families argue, but we don't tear each other apart." Jenna took a deep breath, her assertiveness softening into something more conciliatory. "We have to find a way forward." Together, Elliot dropped his cigarette, grinding it underfoot reluctantly. "Maybe, but it's going to take more than speeches." Max finally stood, the invitation in his hand folded but not yet discarded. "We've hit a crossroads. But the choice isn't just about me or the club. It's about who we want to be separately and together." The room fell silent, the weight of Max's words settling among them. Outside, the neon signs sputtered once more, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow that seemed to echo the uncertainty and hope inside. As the night deepened, the troop lingered in the back room, voices lowering from confrontation to conversation. Plans were whispered, doubts voiced, and tentative agreements made. The battle for the punchline's future was far from over, but in this moment of crossroads and confrontations, the seeds of renewed unity were sown. And as Max looked around at the faces of his friends, flawed fierce and fiercely loyal, he realized that no matter the outcome, their story was just beginning. The flickering neon outside blinked once, then steadied, as if winking in solidarity with the troop inside a small, stubborn light refusing to be extinguished. The punchline's backstage was unusually stifling that evening, the air thick with an almost tangible tension that none of its usual noise-clinking glasses, muffled laughter, the buzz of neon could penetrate. Jenna Lee and Elliot Brooks stood mere feet apart, their faces flushed with frustration, voices sharp and clipped as they volleyed barbs masked thinly as jokes. The rest of the troop hovered uneasily nearby, caught in the undertow of a rivalry that had been simmering for weeks but now boiled over in the claustrophobic confines of their shared sanctuary. "I'm telling you, Elliot," Jenna said, her voice rising just enough to be heard over the hum of the aging air conditioner. "The audience wants fresh, vibrant energy, not deadpan gloom. If I'm not the headliner next month, this club's going to lose its heartbeat." Elliot smirked, folding his arms across his lean frame. "And fresh and vibrant means what, exactly?" Shouting louder, jumping around like a cartoon. "There's more to comedy than sugar and sparkles, Jenna. You'll learn that if you stick around long enough." Max Harper watched from the sidelines, his fingers twitching as if itching to interject, but weighed down by the familiar ache of self-doubt. He had always been the de facto leader, the voice of reason when chaos threatened to tip over their fragile world. But tonight, even he felt like a bystander, powerless to bridge the widening gap between his two brightest stars. "Enough," Max finally said, stepping forward, his voice low but firm, carrying the weight of exhaustion and authority. "This isn't just about who gets top billing. It's about keeping this place alive. We're all on the same side." Jenna shot him a glare, her short curly hair catching the dim light as she turned away. Elliot's expression hardened, but he said nothing, retreating into silence. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, until the club's door creaked open, breaking the spell. Maya Sanchez entered, clutching a crisp envelope that seemed too heavy with bad news. Her short bob framed a face set in determined lines, glasses perched low on her nose. Tony Russo followed behind, his usual boisterous energy dimmed by the gravity of the moment. "I need everyone in the office," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. The troop shuffled after her, the weight of anticipation pressing them forward. Inside the cramped office, Maya unfolded the eviction notice with deliberate care, the legal jargon stark against the worn wooden desk. Tony leaned against the wall, fists clenched, while Max paced slowly, the edges of his worn leather jacket brushing the floor. "Victor Crane's team is serious," Maya said quietly, eyes sweeping over each of them. "This is their final notice. We have 30 days. A heavy silence engulfed the room. The punchline they'd been fighting to save was now a ticking clock, counting down to oblivion. Jenna's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she squared her shoulders. "Then we fight," she declared. "We do everything we can to keep this place open." Elliot exhaled sharply, the first crack in his usually impenetrable cynicism. "We'd better, because if this place dies, so do all of us." Max stopped pacing, looking around at the faces of his friends and rivals alike. For all their differences and conflicts, they shared a fragile dream. The kind that kept them coming back to the mic night after night, chasing laughter in a city that often seemed indifferent. "All right," Max said, voice steadying. "We put aside the rivalry. We pull together for the punchline." As the neon sign outside flickered uncertainly against the gathering dusk, the troop gathered closer, the fragile threads of their friendship stretched but not broken. They stood at the edge of an abyss, the final eviction notice a stark reminder of the fight ahead. The power struggle wasn't over, but for now, survival demanded a truce. And beneath the tension, a spark of hope flickered, small and fragile, but stubbornly alive, just like the punchline itself. The coming days would test every ounce of their resilience, forcing them to confront not only the threat from without, but the fractures within. But if they could endure the clash of egos and fears, maybe, just maybe, they could reclaim the laughter that once filled these walls and save the club that had become their home. As Max scribbled a plan in his battered notebook, the unmistakable echo of a sardonic laugh broke the silence, a reminder that humor, even under pressure, was their greatest weapon. And with that, the troop prepared to face the uncertain night ahead. The punchline's future was hanging by a thread. But in the heart of New York City, where dreams collided with harsh realities, the fight was far from over. Would they find a way to unite and survive? The next move was theirs, and the stakes had never been higher. The punchline breathed a tired, uneven breath that night, its flickering neon sign outside struggling to hold a steady glow against the encroaching darkness of the city. Inside, the air was thick with tension and exhaustion, the usual buzz of laughter and applause dampened by the weight of uncertainty. Backstage, Jenna Lee sat curled on the cracked leather couch that had seen better days. her colorful outfit a stark contrast to the muted shadows around her. Her short, curly hair was damp, not from sweat, but from tears she refused to shed openly. The laughter from the stage was a distant echo now, fading into a silence that felt as heavy as the city itself. Jenna's set had been a brave effort, but the jokes about her recent breakup fell flat, the audience polite but distracted. She had tried to mask her pain with humor, but as the spotlight dimmed and the next comic took the stage, the fragile facade crumbled. She exhaled softly, the weight of loneliness pressing down. Maya Sanchez noticed immediately, approaching quietly with a bottle of water and a comforting smile. "Hey," Maya said gently, sitting beside her. "You okay?" Jenna shook her head, voice catching. "I'm trying, Maya. It's like every laugh feels like a lie sometimes." Maya nodded, understanding more than Jenna could say. "This club, this family, it's tough, but we're tougher. You don't have to carry it alone." Their whispered conversation was a bomb, a reminder that beneath the punchlines were people struggling to hold it together. Outside, Max Harper leaned against the cold brick wall, the neon sign flickering erratically above him. His dark hair was a mess, and his worn leather jacket did little to shield him from the biting night air. The phone in his hand buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a call from his father. Max hesitated before answering, the tension in his shoulders visible even in the dim streetlight. "Max," his father's voice was low, edged with years of disappointment and unspoken regrets. "You need to think about what's next. That club won't save you forever." Max's jaw tightened. "I'm not done yet. Just don't get stuck, son." The call ended, leaving Max staring at the phone as if it might offer answers he didn't have. The weight of family expectations, old wounds, and his own fear of failure pressed heavily on him. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a stubborn fire glimmered, the same fire that had brought him to the punchline years ago. Inside the club, the dim light barely touched Elliot Brooks as he sat in the corner, a cigarette burning slowly between his fingers. His tall, lean frame was slouched, the simple tee and jeans doing little to mask the weariness etched into his face. His notebook lay open but blank, the pages refusing to yield the sharp jokes and biting observations he was known for. The hum of the empty club was a stark contrast to the roaring laughter he once commanded. Elliot exhaled a plume of smoke, watching it curl toward the cracked ceiling. His creative well had run dry, and with it, his confidence. The memories of past successes and recent failures tangled together, creating a knot of cynicism and despair. Yet, somewhere beneath the surface, a faint pulse of hope lingered, waiting for a spark to reignite the joy he once found in comedy. In the cramped office, Maya shuffled through a mountain of bills and invoices under the harsh fluorescent light. Her short bob framed a face set with determination, glasses perched just so as she juggled numbers that refused to balance. The finances were tight, the club's survival hanging by a thread. Yet, her pragmatic nature refused to yield to despair. The door burst open, and Tony Russo's loud voice filled the room. "Hey, boss lady, I brought donuts." Maya couldn't help but smile at the stocky man's boisterous energy, his backwards baseball cap a familiar sight. Tony's attempts to lighten the mood were sometimes clumsy, but his loyalty was undeniable. "Thanks, Tony," Maya replied, setting aside the papers. "We need all the good vibes we can get." Tony grinned, plopping down beside her. "And maybe I'll try some new bits tonight. No more just slapstick for me. I want to be taken seriously." Maya raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. "I like the sound of that." As the night deepened, The comedians of the punchline face their inner demons with varying degrees of success. Jenna's quiet breakdown backstage revealed a vulnerability she rarely showed. Max's strained conversation with his father forced a reckoning with his past. Elliot's solitude and creative block hinted at the need for rediscovery. Maya's tireless management underscored the precariousness of their shared dream, while Tony's earnest desire for growth added a spark of hope. The club itself seemed to hold its breath, the flickering lights mirroring the fragile hope that bound them together. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges that threatened to unravel their unity. Yet beneath the surface, the pulse of laughter and friendship remained waiting for the moment to shine again. And as the city outside roared on, the punchline stood as a testament to resilience, a battered beacon for those who dared to dream in the face of fading light. The night ended not with a bang, but a quiet promise. They would face whatever came next together, even if the future was still shrouded in shadows. "We're not done yet," Max whispered to himself, the words catching in the cold air. Not by a long shot. The punchline's neon sign flickered once more, steadying for a moment before dipping into darkness, then glowing anew, faint but defiant, as if to say, "We're still here." The punchline's backstage was thick with a mixture of stale cigarette smoke, spilled coffee, and the faint, bittersweet scent of sweat and nerves. The room, cramped and peeling at the edges, was cluttered with remnants of past shows' torn posters, discarded joke sheets, and a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey that had seen better days. Under the harsh glare of a single bare bulb, 5 figures circled the chipped wooden table, their faces etched with exhaustion, frustration, and the fragile hope that had not yet been extinguished. Max Harper sat slouched, his worn leather jacket creaking as he shifted nervously. His dark hair was tousled, eyes shadowed but alert. The usual sardonic smile was absent, replaced by an uncharacteristic tension. Across from him, Jenna Lee's vibrant curls seemed almost luminous in the dim light, her colorful outfit a beacon of energy amid the gloom. Elliot Brooks leaned against the wall, tall and lean, arms crossed, a cigarette dangling loosely from his fingers, his expression unreadable but his eyes betraying a guarded weariness. Maya Sanchez, the club's manager and emotional anchor, sat upright, glasses perched low, her short bob framing a face marked by determination and worry. Tony Russo, stocky and ever boisterous, wore his baseball cap backward, his usual loud grin tempered by the gravity of the moment. "We need to talk," Max began, voice rough but steady. The others leaned in, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "The eviction notice isn't just a scare tactic. Victor Crane's team means business. If we don't pull something off soon, the punchline's done." Jenna's eyes flashed with fierce determination. "Then we give them a show they can't ignore. Something bold, something that reminds New York why this place matters." Elliot snorted quietly. "Bold? We can't even get through an open mic without half the acts bombing." "I know," Max said, rubbing his forehead. "But this is different. This is our last shot." Maya folded her hands tightly. "I've been crunching numbers. We're bleeding money fast. But if we can pack the house for this showcase, get some media attention, maybe even a celebrity drop-in, we might just scrape by." Tony punched the table lightly. "Then let's make sure everyone knows it's the event to be at. No more half-hearted jokes or slapstick fails. This is the big league." The room fell into a charged silence. Each of them wrestled with the weight of the moment and the ghosts of their past failures. Max's thoughts drifted to the opportunity he had once walked away from, the promise of a career that now seemed a lifetime ago. Jenna recalled the sting of her recent breakup, the way it had shaken her confidence but also sharpened her voice. Elliot's cynicism momentarily cracked as he remembered why he had fallen in love with comedy in the first place, the thrill of a laugh, the connection with an audience. "We can't do this alone," Maya said softly. "We're a mess, sure, but that's what makes us real. That's what makes the punchline special." Max nodded slowly, the familiar spark of leadership rekindling. "All right, we put the past behind us. We come together. We fight for this place, for our dreams." Jenna grinned, her optimism infectious. "Then let's get to work." As the meeting broke up, the air felt lighter, charged not with despair but with cautious hope. The comedians scattered to their corners of the club, each carrying the fragile flame of possibility. Tonight had been the reckoning, the moment they faced their fears and chose to stand together, however imperfectly, against the tide. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent energy. The punchline's neon sign flickered uncertainly, but inside, the troops' laughter and resolve began to stitch together the fragile seams of their shared dream. Tomorrow's battles awaited, but for now, they had taken the first, hardest step. Max lingered a moment, looking at the battered notebook in his hand. He scribbled a line, a joke born from the night's tension. It was rough, unpolished, but it was theirs. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough. The night was far from over. The air inside. The punchline was thick with anticipation and the faint scent of stale beer mixed with the dusty promise of a new beginning. Under the tired glow of the dimmed amber bulbs that hung crookedly from the ceiling, the worn wooden stage beckoned Max Harper like a challenge he wasn't sure he was ready to meet. Tonight's rehearsal wasn't just another run-through. It was a crucible where past failures and future hopes would collide. Max stood center stage, notebook clutched loosely in one hand, his other hand twitching with a nervous energy he rarely allowed himself to show. The leather jacket he wore had seen better nights, much like himself, but it was his armor, and tonight he needed all the protection it could offer. He cleared his throat and began, voice low and uneven at first. The jokes were sharp, as always, but the usual sardonic edge gave way to something more fragile, a confession veiled in humor. "I used to think failing was just a punchline waiting to happen," Max said, eyes flicking nervously toward the back of the room where Jenna Lee and Elliot Brooks sat watching. "Turns out, it's more like a recurring nightmare you can't wake up from." Jenna's face softened, her short curls bouncing as she laughed quietly, while Elliot's usual impassive expression cracked just enough to reveal a hint of empathy beneath the cynicism. Max took a deep breath, his voice gaining steadiness. "But maybe, the joke's on me, because here I am, still standing on this rickety stage, trying to find the punchline that makes it all worth it." The room held its breath for a beat longer than expected. Then Jenna clapped softly, breaking the tension with her infectious optimism. "That's the Max we know." Backstage, the cluttered nook where the troupe gathered was alive with quiet energy. Notebooks lay open, scribbled with half-finished bits and crossed-out lines, while half-empty coffee cups and empty water bottles littered the makeshift tables. Jenna leaned forward, rubbing her temples as exhaustion threatened to overtake her usual spark. "I can't keep burning the candle at both ends," she muttered, her voice tinged with frustration. "But if I slow down, won't I lose momentum?" Maya Sanchez, ever the pragmatic manager with her short bob and glasses perched on her nose, smiled gently as she handed Jenna a fresh cup of herbal tea. "Balance isn't about losing momentum," she said firmly. "It's about pacing the race so you actually cross the finish line." Jenna took a sip, the warmth spreading through her like a quiet reassurance. "Thanks, Maya. Sometimes I forget that keeping the club alive means keeping ourselves alive, too." Meanwhile, near the battered bar that bore the scars of years gone by, Elliot Brooks stood with a cigarette dangling loosely between his fingers. His tall, lean frame was relaxed in a way that was new, less guarded, less sarcastic. When Tony Russo, the stocky, baseball-capped comic, stumbled through a clumsy physical gag during rehearsal, Elliot chuckled genuinely, the sound low and rare. "You're terrible," Elliot said, with mock severity, "but somehow it's working." Tony grinned, a mix of relief and pride filling his eyes. "I'll take terrible if it gets a laugh." The camaraderie was fragile but real, a tentative thread weaving through the group's collective exhaustion and hope. In the cramped office behind the club, Maya paced, phone pressed to her ear. Bills and schedules were strewn across the desk, a testament to the delicate balancing act she performed daily. Her voice was steady but worn as she negotiated late into the night, securing last-minute resources and concessions to ensure the club's readiness. "We're doing everything we can," she said quietly to herself after hanging up. "This place deserves that much." The night stretched on, the troupe's rehearsals punctuated by moments of breakthrough and setback. Max's willingness to bear his insecurities shifted the group's dynamic. Trust began to replace suspicion and rivalry. Jenna's newfound balance allowed her to shine without burning out, while Elliot's softened cynicism rekindled his passion for the craft. Maya's sacrifices underscored the stakes beyond the stage, and Tony's determination added a vital spark of energy. As the last notes of laughter faded into the silence of the empty club, a tentative hope settled over the punchline. The troupe was not perfect, far from it, but they were beginning to understand that their strength lay not just in individual talent, but in the bonds they forged through shared struggle. Max closed his battered notebook. The scribbles inside, less a record of failed jokes, and more a map of their collective journey. "We've got one shot," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Let's make it count." Outside, the neon sign flickered on, its uncertain glow a fragile beacon in the New York night. Inside, the laughter was no longer just a sound, but a promise that even in the face of uncertainty, they would stand together, ready to face whatever came next. But as the troupe dispersed into the night, each carrying their own doubts and hopes, one question lingered in the air. Could their newfound unity and emotional openness withstand the pressure of the impending showcase, or would the weight of their dreams prove too heavy to bear? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be written in the laughter and tears yet to come.